This episode of Heavy Cardboard is brought to you from the great folks over at GameSurplus.com, bringing the world of board games to you. Now, on to the show. Heavy Cardboard, Episode 92, Kepler-3042. Coming to you from the pre-advent of holiday gaming preparation HQ. Welcome to Heavy Cardboard, where we talk medium and heavy strategy board games, war games, 18xx, and other related topics in the board gaming hobby. We're your hosts. I'm Edward.
And I'm Amanda. Thanksgiving was amazing, as always.
Yeah, we're not hurting for food during that week.
Not that week, no.
Because we're pretty good about eating leftovers all week.
Yeah.
Because I don't know how to make enough for a meal.
No, you know how to make enough for an army.
I do. That's true. So not to go over every single thing that we made, but made Chipotle sweet potatoes, as is my tradition. However, you and the rest of the house wanted regular sweet potatoes.
Yeah, regular candied sweet potatoes.
Which they were tasty.
Yeah.
They weren't too sweet.
They really weren't. Yeah, Dana had a streusel-ish type topping on top. It was really yummy.
Which could have done without, to be honest with you.
The best part.
But the Chipotle sweet potatoes have just enough sweetness and enough heat to just really, I love them. They're my favorite way of making sweet potatoes. The turkey turned out pretty good. We weren't going to do a turkey, but
we always say that, and then we always have a turkey.
Right. So, yeah, you know. And I bought a couple extra turkey breasts because I was going to make turkey noodle soup with matzo balls, as I do for some of the leftovers, homemade cranberry sauce, etc., etc. So, yeah, turned out really good.
Yeah, it was delicious. And we had Bev over. She drove up from Arkansas and stayed with us for a couple days before Thanksgiving and a couple days after. And it was nice to have the big ball of energy that is Bev around the house.
Yep. That was a lot. No, that was a lot of fun. We played a lot of games.
We did.
So that was good. And it was cool to meet her.
It was nice. You were still making up sleep from BGG Con.
I was.
You owed the Sandman a lot of time.
But I think he and I are square now.
I think y'all are good. Yeah, it took a while, but I think y'all are finally good. So on Thursday night after we ate, you headed off to sleep because you were falling asleep in the chair. And Matt, Dana, and Bev and I put on some Christmas music and put up the tree and decorated it. And then we're all Christmased up. And then we sat around and talked for like 2 or 3 hours.
And I laid down and snored for 10 hours. It was wonderful. Now the house looks good, so I'm glad you guys did it. So thanks for taking that on.
Absolutely. So this is going to be an insane month for the amount of quality Q stuff we're going to be putting out.
Yeah, it's definitely ludicrous speed when it comes to both quality and quantity of content. So we are going to be doing the advent of holiday gaming or holiday streaming, whatever. 24 streams, 24 days. So it's going to start Friday, so tomorrow, with Clans of Caledonia. So come join us. It's definitely going to be a ton of work, but hopefully a lot of fun as well. As long as a lot of people come around, watch them, help motivate us, keep our energy up, especially as the month goes on.
Absolutely. Around like the 15th, we're probably going to be pretty sleepy. So if you guys could give us some like, go, yay, type things, I think that'll help.
All that said, we are not going to neglect the podcast.
Not at all.
We have the following coming for the podcast. We have the weekly reviews, like this, plus First Look podcasts, or Pod Blasts, more Essen interviews, my conversations with Heavy Cardboard with Michael Keller, who's the designer of Agra, La Granja, and Solarius Mission, and possibly some other Pod Blasts here and there, which is where y'all are going to come in. If there is something specific that you guys want, email us and let us know, and we'll see if we can add it. If not during the advent of holiday gaming, then definitely something afterwards. But it's possible we could do it during.
Never know.
So it's the impetus is on y'all to let us know what it is you would like to hear.
You can email us at contact@heavycardboard.com, or you can send us a message through our website at heavycardboard.com. Secret Elephant Santa is in full swing.
Yes, the Secret Elephant is going strong. There's been a number of updates. People have already got packages and open packages and already played some of their games.
Right.
There's a geek list over on BGG. I forget the title of it,
It's
but
like What My Secret Elephant Got Me.
2017, right? Something like that. So definitely pretty cool to see that folks are already getting their packages and that there's a lot of people that are really in the spirit of what this is, which is the giving and the teasing and the riddling and all of that stuff. It's really awesome to read how above and beyond. And I'm not talking by quantity of gifts or anything. Sure, there are some folks out there that are really, really going whole hog when it comes to the gift giving itself. But I'm talking more the process of this and just the spirit of what this is about. I think it's really awesome to read about how just into this a lot of people are.
Which is awesome. It's always fun to see all that stuff and read about it. And the day that the targets were announced, Matt got an geek mail saying your stuff's on the way and it's here already. And yeah, so his secret elephant didn't mess around.
It is seriously. I have reached out to my targets, and my secret elephant has reached out to me to touch base. So as long as there's an initial contact, then we're good to go.
Yeah.
Just, hey, you're not forgotten about. Don't worry.
Yeah,
that type thing.
Yeah, that's always good to hear because you're like,
hello, anybody there? Knock, knock.
Hello,
Davis,
hello,
are you there? On that note, for the holiday shopping in general, don't forget,
Game Surplus offers a 10% discount to all patrons.
Yep, there's a code for if you are a patron of Heavy Cardboard. You get a flat 10% off all the Heavy Cardboard podcast picks on their website. So check that out. And if that motivates you to become a patron, all the better.
Absolutely. And then also for patrons, if you purchase a table from boardgametables.com, then send them an email letting them know that you're a patron, and then we verify that information. They will send you a free poker chip tray.
So on that note, I had I talked to Katie and Chad when I was at BGG Con, and they were like, oh, the quantity of your patrons that ordered Duchess tables during the Kickstarter that have been emailing us is not a trivial number. I think when they originally said this, they meant for the custom tables, not for the Duchess tables. But oh well, here we are. And so all that, plus there's 10% off inserts over at Meeple Realty if you use the code HC17. And then
there's our stuff.
Yep, all our swag has finally made it to HCHQ. So here we go. Game bags, polo shirts, ball caps, challenge coins, Cloisonné pins, coffee mugs, pint glasses, badge holders, and the patron-only t-shirts designed by the Ian O'Toole will be ready around the new year or so. Really, really excited to see what he comes up with.
I cannot wait to see this.
He gets to play single dad for a while, so he's been a bit inundated with things. So totally understand that. No worries. I'm just excited that we have a ballpark time frame now in which to expect this, because we don't know what he's going to design either. It's not like we're holding this back from folks.
No, we have absolutely no idea.
But in Ian, we trust.
Exactly. Let's talk about a little bit what we've been playing. We talked about earlier about how when Bev was here, we played a lot more games than normal, which was awesome.
Yeah. Well, a lot more games than we had been. The new normal, not the getting back to normal.
Right.
Anyway, moving on. So we streamed Vinhos on Tuesday.
I got trounced, but that's
you did, but I think that was important for you to get smoked as hard as you did.
You know what? No, because I looked at the app and Edward thinks I've won like 15 games in a row, and it was like I won like 2, and then you won 3 or 4, and then I won 1. And
really?
Then, yeah.
It felt like you had won like 8 or 10 in a row. No exaggeration.
Not even a little bit.
Interesting. Okay. All right. Well, in that case, I apologize.
Well, thank you. I know you were a little nervous leading up to the teach of that.
Yeah, I had to knock the rust off after having not streamed a game. Now, I talked on
But that's
camera.
different.
But yeah, the teaching of a game, that requires a little bit je ne sais quoi.
Yes.
And it's not an easy teach to begin with, but our patrons voted for the game in November, and that was going to be the only opportunity. So, okay, we had to do it.
And you probably did a pretty good job teaching the game whenever the designer is in the chat room and gives you props.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. So he said he wasn't going to be there, but knowing Vital, he doesn't sleep anyways.
I knew he would be there, and I told you, and you were like, no, it's too late. And then he popped up in chat, and I was like,
It was like 3, 4 in the morning or so in Portugal. And after the teach, he was like, no, great job. I teach the fair when that comes up as well. So you did well. And I was like, oh, okay. Not bad for coming back into it cold like that and then having that happen. So that was cool to see. All right. So obviously there's Vinhos, and then obviously Kepler-3042 in anticipation of the review, and then a bunch of Essen games. There was Lagerstatten, which we're going to be streaming as part of the Advent on Saturday.
That's right.
Noria, likely to be streamed later in the month. Keyper, we're going to have a first look for both Noria and Keyper coming up later for next week. So look for those, but also more that we're going to probably live stream during the Advent. Clans of Caledonia, which again, we're going to live stream that on Friday.
That's our first one.
Feudalia, which again, we're going to have another first look on the podcast for that. Kind of a Dominion-esque type game.
Yeah, it was interesting.
And then last but not least, Pixie Queen, which I'll be honest, the theme, no. However, the game itself, brutal.
Yes, it is.
And in the best way possible.
It's great.
Another first look coming for that. So stay tuned on that. Big thank you to our sponsor, BoardGameTables.com. If you're in the market for a customized, one-of-a-kind board game table, go check them out, BoardGameTables.com.
Let's go to space.
Far out, dude.
Yeah.
All right, Kepler-3042, published in 2016 and 2017, designed by Simone Cerruti Sola, the artwork in the second edition by Kwanchai Moria, and published this year by Renegade Games, originally by Placentia Games. I'm mentioning that because we're going to be referencing both games throughout this review, and so just to give credit to both sides there. Plays 1 to 4 players in about 60 to 90 minutes, give or take a little bit. As far as availability and cost, the good news is, according to the press release from Renegade Games, the MSRP is going to be $65, and it's going to be available, at least here in the States, December 13th. So just a couple weeks from now. As far as plays and player counts, we've only played the Renegade Games version once.
Right.
However, we played the Placentia Games version, 5 or 6 times.
A lot. Yeah, we played that a lot last year.
And mechanically, they're identical games. It's all graphic work that changed in the rule book. The format and all that changed. So that said, we've played it 3 and 4 players. Haven't played it solo and did not play this 2-player.
No, we didn't. The year is 3042. Humanity is ready to explore the galaxy. The most interesting celestial bodies to explore and eventually colonize have been known for centuries, and the nations of Earth finally have the technological level to reach them, thus beginning an unarmed competition that in the end, the whole of humanity will win.
Kepler-3042 is a resource management game in which you have to explore, colonize, and exploit, and terraform the planets of the Milky Way using the available technologies. Each round, you're going to choose which action to perform, which bonus to activate, if any, while managing your supplies of matter, energy, and antimatter. The peculiar strength of the game is the innovative resource management. Each player has a finite amount of matter, energy, and antimatter that they can produce or spend during the game. In each of the 16 rounds, they can decide to burn forever 1 or more resources to perform actions, thereby allowing them to follow different strategies. And as I said, 16 rounds. At the end of 16 rounds, you're going to tally up a marginally small amount of victory points. Whoever has the most victory points at the end wins. So let's roll straight into the 5 factors that give the game its weight, starting with complexity or the rules overhead.
This is not a complex game. The rules aren't crazy, and they don't add to the weight, in my opinion.
No, I totally agree with that. There's low overhead, and everything makes sense. It's an intuitive design and just across the board.
Yeah, just it doesn't, you don't have to really reference the rule book because what you feel like you should be doing is what you should be doing because it just kind of has a natural flow to it.
Now, talking about the planning, the fact that you only get 1 action per round, which means 16 rounds, 16 actions with the possibility of some bonus actions, but they come with a cost that to be able to do more than a single true objective, you really need to plan from the very beginning of the game. This isn't something to where you're like, oh, I'll just do this and and then I'll figure it out as I go. If you do that, and your opponents are on the other side of that to where they're planning from the very beginning, you're going to likely get smoked.
Yeah, because of the fact that you are burning your finite number of resources to be able to do those extra actions, what happens if you didn't think far enough ahead and you need 5 matter to terraform this planet, but you can't because you burned one 5 or 6 rounds ago because you thought it might be a cool idea to do.
Yeah,
you
exactly.
Can't do that.
Yeah, so the level of planning in this game is deceptively strong as far as the amount of planning that should go into this to do well in Kepler.
Yeah.
Now, as far as the luck or the randomness in the game, so there are essentially 3 different random factors. However, 2 of them are pre-game. The way the planets are in the mines and everything else like that, the celestial bodies, the way those are distributed, that's all pre-game. So that's all set up beforehand. Although you don't know what's going to be where until you explore it during the actual actions as taking actions in the game. So there is some randomness where things end up. There's the endgame goal cards, but again, those are distributed pre-game, so you know it going in. And then there's the progress cards that happen before every round. Now, those progress cards really can be trivial if you're not lagging behind on the 2 advancement tracks, because a lot of them tend to be tied to that. And if you tend to, fast forward your way up those tracks or up technologies, then they're not really going to help you. They're more or less catch-up mechanics for the players that are behind. So I would say that kind of drags down as far as the weight goes because of those factors.
That, and then we'll talk a little bit later about another catch-up mechanic that there is in the game. But those, like you said, those progress cards, once you get to a certain point, they're just kind of useless.
A lot in many ways, or they're minor adjustments. Even if they do affect you, they're minor adjustments. So I don't feel like there is a huge factor in the game, but I definitely don't think they're contributing to the weight of the game. I would say, if anything, it reduces a little bit of the weight of the game.
I would agree with that.
Now, as far as game length goes, what do you got?
It feels like in order to do everything that you want to do or need to do, it seems like it should have more rounds. You get to that 16th round and it's like, gah.
Yeah, 16 rounds sounds like a lot, and it gives that appearance of a long game with plenty of time to do everything. Until you're actually, wow, how are we halfway through the game and I really haven't done much?
Yeah.
And what's my secret objective?
Right.
Wow, I have 8 rounds to do that? So it sneaks up on you. So I don't think I think the game length here might contribute a little bit to the weight, but in a non-traditional way. It's not because the game length is, a really long game. It's the fact that, wow, 16 rounds, that sounds pretty significant. But it's not sneaky in that it goes back to that planning to where you have to make use of all of those 16 turns.
That's a really good point.
So the game length, I think, actually adds to the weight, but again, not in the way you would think. It takes forever to play this game.
Yeah, not in the way you would think. It's because the amount of planning you have to just squeeze that into 16 rounds.
Right. If the game had been 20 rounds, then whatever.
Yeah.
But I think the 16 is
you can have if there's
tough.
more, there's more than that, you can maybe have a couple of rounds where you're not really quite sure. Maybe this will work. Nah. But with 16,
you better be on point with that. As far as the getting it factor,
I'd say 1 or 2 rounds, but it can help to see a planet be colonized.
And the terraforming and being clear on, okay, production is at the top of the card, terraforming's at the bottom of the card. But that can all be explained during teaching, but just to have it kind of driven home in your head. But it's definitely going to be inside of one play. However, I do feel it's very, very important for whoever teaches the game to make sure, and I'm going to touch on this later, to make sure that players are aware of the end game scoring, because they need to know what they're shooting for. There's no track. It's, as is popular the last couple of years, there's a score pad and a bunch of different things score.
Yeah.
So you need to be aware of those. So ultimately, where do you think it falls?
To me, it's midweight, medium-ish.
I'm agreeing with you there. However, it has a BGG weight rating of 3.46 out of 5, which is a really high, heavy weight. I mean, it's pretty grossly overstated in my opinion. And I'm not saying that because we come from the perspective of heavy gamers, but that's on par with stuff like Keyflower and Twilight Struggle, both of which are considerably heavier in this game.
Yeah.
Now, I understand that I'm putting an emphasis in the amount of planning, but it's still not that heavy.
It's not that heavy, no.
I would say this is more on par with a Rococo type game.
Yeah, I can see that.
Or maybe just a hair above a Castles of Burgundy.
Yeah.
So it's definitely not as high as is rated on BGG.
Yeah, I disagree with that rating. So let's talk about the cardboard. What do you think about the components?
Yeah, I think in both editions, it's really, really solid. I don't have really any complaints. The wood, they're either wooden cubes or wooden discs. In the second edition, they do have nice little custom figures for your spaceships. So that's a nice touch. So as far as the cardboard and the wood, I feel like that's pretty good.
Yeah,
pretty
I do too.
solid.
Yeah.
Unspectacular, but that's okay.
That's fine. One other thing that I like about it is that the player aid is nice and thick and chunky, just like the rest of the cardboard.
Yeah,
things.
as opposed to like a card stock or anything that's easy to ding and dent or whatever.
Yeah, you'd have to throw that thing across the room to dent
and it might stick in your wall still. However, the cards, they're kind of a thinner core. It feels like they're not linen finish, whatever. My big beef, though,
is that they're black bordered.
Yes, stop doing that, publishers, please. I don't care how little cards are shuffled. They will show wear. So you're all but forcing players that are going to try and replay your game, you're going to force them to sleeve them. I don't mind sleeving. I don't want to be forced to sleeve my cards because of that. So please, stop doing that, everyone.
Please. The board is a little crazy in that it folds like 6 times.
There's probably a couple of it could have been a less segmented board. We had a hard time actually making it stay flat in the second edition. We actually have had it sitting under plexiglass with Antiquity and other games to try and flatten it out. But again, whatever, not a huge deal, but figure might want to bring that up to folks.
Yeah, you might want to have it, like unfold it and lay it out for a little while before you play it. Because if you don't have a piece of plexiglass, I don't know that we would have been able to immediately play it.
I'm all for backbending your boards to where you're going against the fold to try and level them out, and I couldn't do that with this.
And it's silly, but I do like that the player boards come with a male side and a female side.
I don't think it's silly, but see, and here's a difference here. I wouldn't have cared if they were all female, they were all male. I just don't care.
Well, there's some games that like certain colors will be male and certain colors will be female.
Okay.
And like if everybody was like a bug or something, I wouldn't care. But I don't really want to play a male character.
So that really matters.
Sometimes it does, especially in the game. But like it's just like a video game. I don't play whenever I'm building my characters. I don't play male.
And I guess I don't play female, so I guess I never really stopped to think about it. So that's a fair point. So that's a nice touch that they added that in, right?
Yeah, it is. I like it.
Cool. Good. Now, as far as the box size, it's a little bit smaller than average. It's 12 inches by 9 inches by 2 3/4 inches. Or for the rest of the world, that's 3.5 by 22, I'll call it 23 by 7 centimeters. Now, graphic design, what do you think?
It's consistent. The only gripe that I would have is that the names of the pink and blue tracks are not written on the board, but they're referenced on the progress cards. And in the first edition, the little icon for each track was on the card themselves and not written
on the
out.
progress card. So when you're reading it, it says
move up one on the little pink thing.
Okay.
You know, it didn't say what it was.
Okay. Oh, you're talking the symbol match.
Yeah.
And that was such a huge gripe. Now, it's a minor thing, but it was just aggravating because there are 18 progress cards in the game. You pull 2 out randomly every game. So there's 16.
Mm-hmm.
There's 1 for every turn. You turn them over every round. In the first edition, it said to move the round marker. That got removed in the second edition as well. Now, yeah, should you remember to do that? Yeah, but if you're caught up in what you're trying to do because you have to be so involved in your planning, it's easy to forget that. And I forgot that half the time.
Yeah.
But in the first edition,
it's the first thing on the card.
Written on the card. And then what you're talking about with the progress cards, I had to keep looking at you and Matt. Which track is that?
Yeah.
And Matt got tired of telling me because I couldn't remember which track was what. Just put a symbol on there or name the tracks on the board.
Do one or the other because everywhere else in the game, it's the symbols.
Yeah. Again, it's a little thing, but it's these little things that add up to make for a level of frustration that just doesn't need to be there.
Yeah, there's no need for it.
Outside of that, though, I think the graphic design is really consistent and really well done. We'll talk about the rule book in a minute.
Right. What about the artwork?
So I think the artwork actually is really, really well done. I'm a huge fan of the board artwork. It's very understated, but the use of color for the space that is in space, not in the space that is the board, but it's all space.
To represent space.
Yeah, there you go. Words.
Yeah.
Really big fan of that. And I dig the artwork on the cards quite a bit.
I feel like the new artwork fits the game more than the first edition artwork.
Okay. All right.
Just the feel of it, I feel like that fits more with the gameplay and just the game itself than the first edition.
Sure. I could see that. And it's a little less, I mean, they're both kind of cartoony, but not. And I don't know if there's a style that this is called.
Yeah, I have no clue.
Yeah, definitely a fan of the artwork. And I don't feel like it
doesn't
affects
detract
gameplay at all. Yeah, agreed.
Rulebook clarity and quality.
So this was kind of interesting to me as we have both versions, right? And mechanically, as I mentioned, the two games are the same. Just the graphics that have essentially changed, maybe some clarifications here and there. However, the layout of the rulebook changed. And in some ways it was better, in some ways it was worse. Now, both the original version and the Renegade Games version, I thought were easy enough to learn the game from. I didn't have a problem with either edition. Let me preface that. So to learn the game, I thought both did a fine job.
Okay.
Okay. However, I felt like the Placentia Games rulebook was significantly better as a reference rulebook.
Okay.
For example, they highlighted keywords in consistent bright colors that stood out. So when you're skimming, like what actions regenerate or get you to regenerate resources is an example, right? You could easily find that in the Placentia Games. I actually spent 5 minutes, maybe 3 to 5 minutes, let's say, referencing the Renegade Games version rulebook, and I couldn't find it.
He finally just got up and got the other one.
Said, "Hey, go look in the other rulebook." I got up, took me 15 seconds, boom, found it like that. So to me, that's an issue.
Yeah.
Okay, that's something that should have been addressed or that was changed that I don't think needed to be changed, and to the detriment of the rulebook. That said, both rulebooks are laid out well, and I would argue that the Renegade Games rulebook is laid out better, and everything is answered within the rulebook. Like, I didn't have rules questions after either rulebook, for that matter. I knew how to play the game. If we had questions, it was there in the rulebook, so I didn't need to go to BGG. And also, both copies have plenty of examples to help with clarifying things as well, so props there. And also, there's a nice addendum that explains the science of things that are in the game and the why. So I thought that was a nice touch.
That's always good for the inner 5-year-old that you are.
Right? And overall, I think it's a decent rule book. The referencing aspect actually was a downgrade, I felt like, from the first to second edition. So, all right. So, yeah, overall, pretty well done, though, for the rule books.
All right. What about setup and tear down, teaching, and learning?
Well, setup and tear down, really easy with a handful of baggies. Just bag everything up in player color, and you're basically ready to rock and roll. Player color as well as your own pool of resources, et cetera, et cetera. Sleeves, again, would probably be smart with the black bordered cards, even though there really isn't a lot of shuffling in this game. Not every day. Not at all. Teaching, overview of the board, the player board, and the components. Then just go over the steps of a turn, and the player aid does a really great job of listing everything in which you're going to do in a turn. It is really invaluable, and it really helps the game just hum along.
It really does.
Really well. After that, detail each of the 9 actions that are available and the player's tech trees, the individual tech trees. Remind folks, 16 turns sounds like a lot, but in actuality, it's real quick and a tight game once you get started. Describe the difference in the endgame goal cards. There's easy versus harder ones. Deal them out. Make sure there's no questions. Rock on. All right, so what do you like about this game, Amanda?
I like that there's a closed economy and that you have your own resources. Those are a finite number, and how you choose to burn them, use them, generate them, not burn them, all of that is your decision to make.
That's a really, really good point. So every player has 7 energy, 7 matter, and 3 antimatter cubes. So they're white, orange, and black, respectively. You don't get more. You can lose them temporarily, possibly permanently. And so you produce them on specific planets, then spend them from those specific planets. But then you have to generate more, and let's face it, that's pretty standard outside of, okay, this planet produces this resource. Maybe that's a little bit different.
Right.
But it's basic, just general, resource production. However, you only have that pool of 7, 7, and 3 in which to generate between your planets and then spend. But then you can take, as you mentioned earlier, you can take bonus actions, which you're burning cubes of your choice, but you're burning resources, and you're going to lose them at least on a semi-permanent basis, possibly on a permanent basis, into the Clausius Pit, which makes for an even tighter economy of resources. And having to choose when and how to burn those precious resources into that Clausius Pit for the bonus actions, that is a brutal decision sometimes.
It really is. And a lot of times in games like this, if you choose to not do the bonus actions, it can be a hindrance to you. But I don't really care for the Clausius Pit. I very rarely use it. I very rarely take extra actions on top of my one action.
And see, I do think that hinders you. It's a matter of negotiating with your plan and with your strategy of, okay, I'm not going to need as many energy. So anybody that gets extra actions than you, if they manage them well, can do a better job. So I understand what you're saying, but I feel like it does hurt you by not taking those extra actions.
But the last time we played, you and Matt were burning like fire and getting all of these extra actions, and I won quite handily.
But I think also we took that too far. I think you can overburn resources to where now all of a sudden you're not maximizing your production. So, okay, wow, I can produce, 5 energy.
Oh, but they're all in the Clausius Pit.
I only have 3. Now that's going to limit what I can do. Yeah. So it's a double-edged sword. So burning them gets you those extra actions. But if you take it too far, too much of a good thing, all of a sudden now you
have 1 antimatter left.
You've eliminated your ability to maximize the actions that you can take later on. So I think that is a really, really clever slit your own wrist. It's entirely up to you. I really like that mechanism.
It's really
in this
cool.
game.
It's really good. Well done. I like that there's a freedom in the tech tree. You can take one action to upgrade one, or you can upgrade it multiple times. If you have the resources, you can do multiple lines of the tech tree. You're not forced to only... There's some games where you can only upgrade one thing per turn. But this, if you have the resources, you can do 5 or 6.
Which I think is important, again, because you only get 16 actions in this game, right? But I agree with you. I like the freedom that I'm allowed to follow. You know what? If I don't care that my ship's only moving 1 or 3 spaces per turn, that's on me.
Right.
I can choose to do that. Or I could just, race up that track to where now, Star Trekking across the universe.
He does that every time he moves his ship, by the way.
Well,
guys.
yeah. Hello. So there's a force limit on everything, not just resources. You're piece limited on stuff. So as I mentioned, you have that 773 for your resources in your own pool. There is no pool of resources
no, it's yours.
that are common to any player in any regard. You only have 3 ships. If you've produced all 3 and you've parked them on planets, you choose not to colonize, you're locked down.
Yeah.
You have 3 ships. Then there's only 5 chances to colonize a planet, so choose wisely. You only have 5 discs, which mark colonization. You better choose them wisely. One of the end-game scoring plateaus is, did you colonize 5 different types of planets? Well, if you got 2 of the same, there went those 5 points.
Yep.
And in a game in which you're scoring 30 to 40 points, 5 is a significant number.
It really is.
And then, as I said, you only get 1 action per round, 16 rounds. So you're limited. The game is intentionally limiting you to make use of everything. So it really is all about efficiency and maximizing and being smart and planning.
There's a secret objective card that you get at the very beginning of the game. You're dealt it before you really start playing. And this can help steer you in a direction, because I always like that in a game, because it helps me, especially if I just can do whatever. If I have a direction, that helps. So having that card to give you an initial thought of, oh, okay, in your example, I have to colonize all 5 types of planets. So let's get started on that.
Right. And there's 2 different levels of those. There's easy ones, which those are worth less points, or there are hard ones, an example, which we used the hard ones in the last game that we played, was you had to terraform a minimum of 3 level 2 planets. So the planets range from, I think, number 1 to number 28 in them. And they just get harder. They produce more things, but they're harder to terraform, and they're harder to colonize. Also, the alien planets. So when I got this goal card, and you get a couple of them, you choose, and I was like, oh, this isn't hard. It's only terraforming 3 level 2 planets. How hard can that be? I was able to do it on turn 15.
Yeah,
and that was my focus. So they are tough and they should be if they're, from the harder deck. And I agree with you. You have to know what direction you're either going to go for that or you're not.
Yeah.
And you better make that decision at turn 0.
Yes. And like the one I had was colonizing and terraforming an alien planet. So I had to rush the technology tracks, because you can't colonize, and you definitely can't terraform an alien planet until you're pretty far up on those tracks.
So the game is kind of called a 3X of a 4X game. You and I both like Civ games. We both like 4X games. So with this one, I would call it more a 2 or maybe 2.5X.
Yeah.
Because there's exploration. You don't know what planets are out there. There's exploiting them, because anytime you produce resources, you're exploiting the planets, right? Then sort of expansion, but if you want to call it a 3X, I would say expansion in a sense that you're expanding what you can do via tech tree, because there's no realm that you're expanding the borders on or anything. You can freely fly wherever you want to fly.
Yeah, there's not like a fog of war or anything.
Right. And there's no exterminate, because there's no
no fighting.
There's no combat. There's no confrontation. So I enjoy the 2.5. Call it a 3x if you want.
Yeah, I do. I like that it's not... it feels like it plays a little easier and a little faster if you don't have to worry about combat.
Yeah, well, you don't have to build up a military.
Right.
You don't have to build up your defense.
You just go do your stuff.
Okay.
And everybody else goes and does their stuff.
Yeah, I'll buy that.
The thing that I think is really, really cool about the game is that you mentioned I think there's 28 planets. Every single one of them is an actual planet that has actually been discovered. The name of the planet on the card is the actual name of it. And in the rule book, it has listed every single planet and who discovered every single one of them.
Including
the designer. Yeah, and his brother, I'm assuming, because it's the same last name.
That's pretty cool.
I thought it was really neat.
I think that's really clever. So either they're astronomers, I imagine, the designer
or amateur astronomer.
An astronomer is an astronomer, right? Whether you're an amateur or not.
I suppose.
Right? I mean, you're a podcaster, right? Amateur or not.
Yeah, well, I'm an amateur. You're a professional.
Also, there is extremely little downtime in this game. They are very, very quick turns, even at a 4-player game. Even though only one player is acting on their turn, the other 3 aren't doing anything. Unless AP sets in, there's just very little downturn. No. You're just boom, boom, boom. Mm-hmm. Okay, done. That's that.
It goes fast.
It does. All right, on the flip side, things that we're not super keen on. There is very little interaction. And because of this, it's more akin to a solo puzzle than an interactive experience.
Yeah, I would say that the only interaction you get is if someone else colonizes a planet that you are wanting to.
Yeah, that's
literally it, though.
But you can kind of look, you're going to go ahead of me in turn order, and we're going in the same direction. You might colonize that planet before me. Oh, well.
Yeah, if it happens, it happens. I go somewhere else.
Right.
I'm really not a big fan of the catch-up mechanic that's on the player technology chart. We spoke a little earlier about it. Once you get to a certain level of the tech...
Which is like the 4th or 5th step on the tech,
right.
Which is the end, either the penultimate or the end of the track.
On some of the penultimate ones, once you get there, everyone gets level 1. And then on all of the very last ones, all of your opponents get either the first or the second level of that tech. And I don't like that. I don't think that my technology should be shared with everybody else. I mean, I understand the reasoning, and it's normal. It usually works out that everybody else has usually got level 1 or level 2 already, but it's kind of a hindrance and an irritation.
Yeah, I completely disagree with you here. I've never seen in any of our games there might be one instance in which somebody gets a free bump out of that, but I don't understand how it would be labeled a hindrance.
It was for me in our last play because I needed to wait as long as possible to be able to colonize an alien planet because I did not want you guys to get that free bump.
Oh, okay. So maybe it's a quiet hindrance that I was never aware of because I never really stopped to worry about, and it's never come up.
Right, because the card I got, like I said, I made sure that I just raced up those tracks, but I raced up to a certain point and then I stopped because I didn't want to share my technology with you people.
Okay. See, and I don't mind that because I think that was another layer of decision that it forced upon you. Mm-hmm. That, okay, you want to do this, but you're going to give other players a bump. Yeah. So that's your choice. Or you go and find something else to do.
Which is what I did.
That works towards another goal. And see, I see that as a positive. I don't see that as a negative. Are you just saying that as a negative because it was a hindrance to you and gosh darn it shouldn't? Golly gee willikers, Amanda.
I'm going to go over there and punch you in the face.
No, seriously. So you don't like that.
I don't. But like in Sidereal Confluence, that's one of the perks is that once somebody discovers something, everybody else gets to.
But it shared the following turn, right?
And it works in that. but I don't like it in this.
Okay. All right. You don't like it. You don't like it. I just disagree.
You have a right to be wrong. That's fine.
So I don't know if this is a positive or a negative. Now, in a lot of games, you always, or in any good game, there's always going to be more that you want to do than what you can do, right? However, I feel like the 16 rounds is so tight that you really are almost on rails once you've made a decision. You really have to go towards the one thing that you're going after, because you're not, there might be a hair of deviation that you could do here or there to try and do these other things, but it's really tight. And so because of it being so tight, I just don't know if it's too limiting, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
That's fair. And I mean, I'm sure that it was play tested to death and they came up with the 16 rounds is the perfect amount for X, Y, and Z reason. But it definitely feels like it's...
You just have to have a really narrow focus.
Very, very, very much tunnel vision.
But then again, maybe that adds to the replayability, the fact that, okay, I did this, so I'm going
I'll do something else.
I'll do something else, right?
Maybe.
So I guess I could see the pros and cons of both, but I figure it's just be aware. It's very, very laser focused on what it is that you're going to be doing to do well, mind you. As far as scalability now, so on the mechanical side, there are base planets that are always used. And then if 3 or 4 players, you're going to add in these others or remove them if you're playing with less and whatever. That's an almost non-issue as far as scaling, because you're only limited 5 per player. And there are far more than there are players. And there's 3 different sectors, the inner, the medium, and then the far sector. And if you're going out to that far sector, you're just not going to spend a lot of time exploring all these different planets.
Right. And also one of the other things that scales is that they're laid out differently. There's a certain number of ones in the inner, and then it's a couple, there's different numbers for different player types.
Yeah, and there's certain stars that you don't populate with less than 4 players and everything else. And then as far as gameplay wise, there really isn't much that really needs to scale here, and it doesn't feel much different regardless of the player count, because there's so little interaction during the game anyways. There's a little bit on the technology, or not the technology tracks, but the 2 tracks that I can never remember the name of, the technical leadership and the colonial leadership tracks. Outside of who gets certain goals first, or you get little victory point shit if you reach the end of the, or not the end, but you reach
certain sections,
milestone points on there. That's really all the interaction there is. So scaling really doesn't come into play in this at all.
It really doesn't. And now we come to Edward's favorite part of any review, where he picks comments from BGG.
Now, these are pretty understated on both sides. There wasn't ZOMG one way or the other, really. So here we go. So this guy talks about the solo game, which I thought would be good since you and I didn't play it solo.
Right.
So far, so good. This is a tough resource management game where you really have to think of the long game. I want to burn resources every round to take bonus actions. But if I do, I'm probably leaving myself with crippling bad rounds at the end of the game. After a few more solo games, I'm impressed with the design. The resource management is so super tight. And that kind of alludes to what we were talking about earlier.
So it's the same for a solo game then.
Right. A very tight Euro 3X game with a cool theme. The game has a limited amount of turns, which makes for a tense and tough game. It is one of those games where you feel like you can't do enough each game. I like the theme, and it's used wonderfully here. All the actions make sense thematically, and the game plays surprisingly fast and quite easy to master. Yup, sounds about right. My major concern is that it might be too samey after a few plays. There's not much variation that can happen, and it seems static. I definitely enjoyed my play and will want to play again, but I fear it will just feel the same. I like my first play better than my second play as expected. It'll be a game that I never request, but will play. So summary?
Kepler-3042 is a game that Edward brought home from Spiel 2016. He's told this story many times. It was on his radar to check out. And then whenever he went by the Placentia Games booth, everybody playing it had their head in their hands, making it obvious that it was like a thinky game. So he had to have it. And we both enjoyed it. And then when at Origin, Sarah at Renegade told us they were reprinting the game, I was so excited to see that this lovely game would be getting more eyes on it. I really enjoy the game, and it can get lost in all the other space-related games. And this one is definitely different, has a different feel, and a different enjoyment level for me.
All right. So for me, this falls into a weird space for me that Kepler is never a game that I'm ever going to be super excited to play, but it's a game that I almost always enjoy whenever we play it. So it's one of those really weird games. So even though I know it, I still don't feel compelled to pull it off the shelf. Now, what does that mean? I think it's a fine game, and I think it is a multiplayer solitaire game. But given the game length and given the focus that this game requires, I think in the time frame that it plays, I think it's a really solid game.
Your rating, sir?
Yep, I got it as a 4. And the reason for that is I wanted to give it less, to be honest with you. I thought it would be a 3. It's fine. It has its perks. It has its thing. It has its place, but But I think the reason I'm giving it a 4 is for the simple fact that I enjoy the game every single time I've played it. And when I think about it, I've now played the game, 6, 7, maybe 8 times since we've gotten it at the original Spiel, and now the new Renegade Games version. That's a fair number of plays, and I'm not sitting here thinking, yeah, I'm glad to be done with that, so let's move on. So I think I can justify a 4 here for me, although I had to kind of justify it a little in my head. So it's a solid 4, but I had to get there.
Wow, and that's funny because it was immediately a 5 for me.
Really?
Yeah. I didn't have to justify anything. I really like this game, and I feel like that anytime I play it, I get better at it, and I really like the multiplayer solitaire part of it. I think that's the INFJ.
Okay.
Personality type thing. But I don't reach for the game to play, but it's going to be really rare for me to turn down to play this game if somebody else wants to.
Even after as many plays as you've had?
Absolutely. I would go play it right now.
All right. Well, good stuff.
Yeah.
So thanks to Renegade Games and Placentia Games for the review copies last year and this year, respectively. So we appreciate that, y'all. And that's Kepler-3042.
I do believe, sir, that you need to go get ready to teach Clans of Caledonia tomorrow for our first stream.
Yep. Happy Advent, guys.
Yay!
It's here. We got to get to it. We'll catch you all next week.
Bye, everybody.